Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. I welcome you all to today's webinar once again. A very warm good evening to everyone. I hope all of you are doing absolutely fine. We are back with another webinar where we will be discussing some of the most important topics, especially from the mains examinations point of view. Good evening, good evening, good evening. I hope my audio and my video both are absolutely fine. They are reaching you fine. You're able to hear me. You're able to see me properly. Good evening, those who have just joined in. Hi, hello. Perfect. Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. We'll wait for just a couple of minutes. Let others join in. Let us have all the people in the class and then we'll begin. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you, Josna, for confirming. Good evening. Hello, Joe. Those who are just joining in, hello, good evening to everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. I hope your preparation is also going up to the mark. As you know, the prelims test series that is going on every Sunday, this gives you a chance to ensure that your preparation is up to the mark. I hope all of you are taking part in this test series. Irrespective of whatever your score is, please don't shy away from taking the test on the exact date where the test is supposed to be taken. One of the biggest mistakes that we do is we think we are not prepared and we usually go and say that we will give the test later on when we are prepared. Please don't do that. Please don't delay. Make sure that you check your preparation, even if you are not getting or if you are not able to solve a lot of questions. Take it as a learning, take a lot of learning from it so that you can solve those in the future as well. Good evening. Perfect. So a lot of people have joined in, so it is a good time to begin. Now, what we have for you today is we have picked up topics specifically from Yojana and the Kurukshetra magazine. Now, as you know, Yojana, Kurukshetra are two of the most significant magazines published by the government of India. They are extremely important for your preparation, especially from the mains point of view. So you are expected to read this because the topics that are covered in these magazines are then very likely to appear in the mains examination in some form or the other. Also, these are published by the government of India, so they are obviously very important. They actually bring us all the information from the government sources, so they are very trustworthy as well. Now, usually what happens whenever we tell students that you have to read these magazines, Yojana, Kurukshetra, they usually avoid reading these for various reasons. Many people say these are boring. Many people think that there's a lot of data, a lot of facts that are packed up in this magazine, which is absolutely correct. But you cannot avoid these magazines. These are extremely important. That is why what we will be doing in this session today is we will be discussing 5 topics specifically from the mains examination point of view. Out of these 5, 4 topics we have taken specifically from the Kurukshetra magazine published by the government of India from November 2022 edition. And then we'll also be talking about one article especially from the Yojana magazine. So this is what we'll be doing. We'll be trying to compress as much information as possible, although these articles are filled with a lot of information, but these are the important information that we have picked up. So we'll start first from safeguarding ocean, that is covered in the Yojana magazine, and then we'll go towards the Kurukshetra magazine as well. So without waiting any further, let's quickly see what we have for you. So the first topic that we want to be discussing today, that is especially from the Yojana magazine of October 2022, is we will be talking about safeguarding oceans. Now, this particular edition of the Yojana magazine had this article called Safeguarding Oceans. Now, Yojana is an English translated word of the Hindi word Yojana. Hindi word Yojana in very simple terms mean government schemes. So Yojana means schemes. So in short, in the Yojana magazine, you will actually see a lot of government schemes being mentioned. A lot of government schemes of various kinds of various ministries, etc. In this article of safeguarding oceans, we actually find a mention of a lot of government schemes, especially for deep ocean research. For deep ocean research. Now, not just India, but nations around the world have been undertaking a lot of initiatives for deep ocean research. In this article, we'll find a mention of all of that. What is the government actually trying to do, and what exactly are the government trying to achieve? Now, as you know, a huge chunk, over three-fourths of the chunks of the earth, is just made up of water, meaning that the life that we have on the land is much lesser as compared to the life that we have in the waters, the life that we have in the oceans. Now, the interesting part is a lot of ocean, a lot of part of it is still unexplored. Nations around the world have been trying to explore oceans in many ways. We usually exploit the sea life, as in fish, lobster, these kind of things, for our eating purposes. Over the past few years, we have also been trying to extract as many minerals as possible from the oceans. Because the fact is, we have exploited minerals from the land, from the surface so much that we are now running out of it. And as humankind progresses, as our population increases, we are now focusing towards the oceans, as in what kind of minerals can we get from these oceans. Now, when you talk about oceans, see, oceans are very, very deep, and there are different layers in the oceans, mainly depending upon how much light reaches that particular part of the ocean. Because when the light reaches that part of the ocean, that means the activity will be much more as compared to other. I'll show you a photo also so that you can get an idea. For example, if you actually see, oceans have certain depth until which the sunlight can permeate. So about 200 meters below the sea surface, till where the light can actually reach, this is called epipelagic zone. Then from 200 meters to about 1000 meters, it is about 1 kilometer. The light of the sun is very, very faint, but it still reaches. This is called the twilight zone or the mesopelagic zone. Then the third zone then comes in from 1000 to 4000 meters is called the midnight zone or the bathypelagic zone. Then in this zone, because the sunlight doesn't reach, remember, from 1000 to 4000 meters or 1 to 4 kilometers, because the sunlight doesn't reach, the creatures in this particular area, the creatures at this particular depth, they have certain very, very unique features. For example, most of them actually use bioluminescence. Now, many of you might have heard of bioluminescence. If not, bioluminescence in simple terms means these are the creatures that actually emit their own light. They emit their own light so that you can actually see around yourself. That is called bioluminescence. So most of the creatures that are found in this depth, when we do not have any sunlight that reaches this part, because of that, to see around themselves, nature has given them an advantage. That is an advantage of bioluminescence, where they can actually emit light from their own body and see around them. At this point, the water pressure is very, very high. See, as you know, the deeper that you go, the more pressure is exerted by water on your body. That is why even when you are swimming, you know that in normal swimming, you can't go very deep into the water. Even when you have all the equipment, you are scuba diving, you have the oxygen cylinder, etc. When you go into the water, you cannot go very deep. Why? The deeper that you go, the more pressure is imposed on you by the water. More pressure is imposed by water on your body. That is why it is very, very difficult to go very deep into the water because of the high pressure that is actually exerted. Even the submarines, only very advanced submarines can go very deep into the water. It's not that every submarine that is made by countries around the world can go very deep into the water. The more deep that you go, the more power you will need to actually go up, come up on the surface once again. So going deep into the water is very, very complex because of the high pressure. In this zone, usually the creatures are black and red in color. They don't have any light, and the average temperature is below 4 degrees Celsius. However, this is not the last zone in terms of depth. After that, also there is one more zone called the abyssal zone, which has a depth of 4000 to 6000 meters, that is 4 to 6 kilometers in depth. Just to give you an idea, this is how these zones actually look like. So these are the different zones that you have. The sunlight zone, where the sunlight reaches the most. Because the sunlight reaches the most in the first zone, this is where you have most of the animal life, with it, where you have most of the marine life. Then you have the twilight zone where the sunlight is slightly lesser. Then you have the midnight zone. Then you have the abysmal zone. And if there is a water body that goes even deeper than that, in the end, that is where you have the trenches. It is very, very rare for any ocean to have trenches, but when you go so deep, very, very little life actually exists. So this is how the zones are usually divided. Now, the problem here is with the countries that are trying to extract minerals from the ocean. See, if you want to extract marine life, fish, lobsters, these kind of things from the ocean, you can do that now. You have a lot of machines, you have a lot of equipment. But if you want to extract minerals from the oceans, minerals are usually present over here in the surface. Now, the problem is when you actually have to go till the surface can be extremely, extremely deep. So that is why the problem here starts. I'm sure many of you would have heard of uh, polymetallic nodules. Have you heard of this? Have you heard this name? Polymetallic nodules. In the past few years, if you have heard of this, great. If you have not heard of this, don't worry. Let me explain what this is. So polymetallic nodules basically means that it is found that on the surface of the water bodies, there are a lot of very, very important materials that are found. There are metals which are made up of different components. For example, manganese, zinc, cobalt, and they are being extracted from the ocean surface. There are huge ships that are being built. The ships just travel around in the ocean, try to pick up as many things from the surface as possible because they can extract metals from those. Because they are made up of different metals, manganese being one of the biggest ones, they are called polymetallic nodules, or they are also called manganese nodules when they are searching for manganese specially. So they are polymetallic nodules or manganese nodules. Many countries are doing this. China is a world leader right now in doing this. They're extracting a lot of minerals. India is also trying to extract as much as possible. Now, what is India doing? Let me give you a few examples of Government of India's initiatives and the schemes run by the Government of India. First, we have something called the R.V. Sindhu Sadhana Scientific Research. R.V. Sindhu Sadhana Scientific Research conducted by the Government of India. Under this research, there was a team of scientists that actually experimented on the marine organisms to understand the process that occurs at this cellular level, to understand how is it that they are able to survive without a lot of light, without a lot of food. What is it that their body actually is made up of? What are the proteins that allow them to survive in such areas as well? Why? Because in the long run, you never know what kind of a help we might need from these kind of organisms. See, we never thought we would live through a pandemic. We never thought that problems such as COVID would hit. That is how scientists have to be prepared for the future as well. If something wrong really happens, we need to know what is the life around us, how do they live, how do they survive, so that if we have to extract some chemicals later on, we actually know the source of it. The branch of biology that deals with protein studies of these animals is called proteomics. Do remember this as well. This is called proteomics. Now, this expedition is not just about animal life. As I told you, countries around the world are really, really interested in extracting as much metals out of the ocean surface as possible. I told you earlier as well, because of the speed of increase in population, nations around the world think that we have already exploited every mineral that we could find on our surface. Because the surface minerals are over, we want to now go ahead and look at water bodies as well. That is why we are concentrating and focusing on the water bodies also. That is why multiple nations are running these missions. So this scientific research is also focusing on ensuring that we find out where the metals can be found. Metals such as I told you, manganese, cobalt, iron, nickel, etc. They have found out that many of these animals also have these metals in their bodies. Many of them would have consumed these metals. When they eat something, it would have mixed up with their food. These trace means in very small quantity. Trace metals are found in a lot of these tissues and they help with their energy mechanism as well. So that is how we are conducting this study as well. The Government of India is running one more mission for some time now. That mission is called the Deep Ocean Mission. Now, the fact is that usually whenever you see the news media discussing, debating, or even when you see the newspapers in India, you will mostly focus, or you will mostly see that government schemes about poverty, health, basically socialist schemes are the ones that you keep on hearing about. Mostly newspapers will cover those schemes: midday meal scheme, government giving free ration, government giving subsidy, government giving free food, Manarega. Those are socialist schemes that are mostly covered in the papers. That doesn't mean that the government is not focusing on other sectors as well. At the same time, apart from focusing on socialism, apart from focusing on the poor people, government of India is also focusing in the field of science and technology. And a very good example of this is the Deep Ocean Mission. Now, this was launched, why? As the name suggests, to explore the marine diversity in our country, which is still unexplored. Understand, we actually neglect the fact, or we overlook the fact that we, India, are a very, very lucky country. We are a very lucky country. See, not many countries can claim to have such a long coastline. We have a huge coastline. Having a very long coastline means a lot of things. Number one, you can exploit marine resources. So you can have India, for example, has a big fishery industry. We export a lot of fish, lobster, these kind of things. Secondly, because we have a long coastline, the trade becomes much easier. We don't have to be dependent on other countries to give us the port access. We have huge ports. We can export and import a lot of stuff. We can actually search for oil, gas, etc. For example, you see how the government of India has been trying to explore oil and gas from the water bodies around us. So all these kind of things actually need government's attention as well. And the government of India also is focusing on these missions, just that they don't really come in the newspapers quite a lot, because newspapers mostly focus on socialist schemes. Now, this project is managed by Ministry of Earth Sciences, and the government is exploring the underwater world, just like ISRO is exploring the space. They're also doing this. Just that ISRO comes a lot in the news, and these kind of things don't really come a lot in the news. Under the Deep Ocean Mission, we have the Samudrayan mission as well. Now, what is Samudrayan? Please do remember, it's a very, very interesting mission that will happen in the future. Under the Samudrayan mission, and these are the kind of things that actually come in the examination in UPSC, and you don't really see these mentioned in the newspapers, because Yojana, Kurukshetra, they are the ones who mention these kind of information. That's why it is important to read these magazines. So Samudrayan mission will be Government of India's unique manned ocean mission, meaning that what will happen, the Government of India is planning that they will develop a kind of a submersible vehicle, like a submarine, a small vehicle, a small car kind of a thing, which can go underwater, and it will be a manned mission. See, manned missions are very, very complex to carry out. We discussed this earlier as well when we were discussing about the Artemis mission, if you remember, just the last webinar. When you have a manned mission, meaning that when you actually have human beings inside of that particular machine, it becomes very, very critical to ensure their safety. That is why these kind of missions take a lot of time to develop. So Samudrayan mission is Government of India will actually have a submersible vehicle for deep ocean exploration and to mine the rare minerals. Rare minerals are those minerals which are in demand across the entire world, and China is a leader there. As you know, as more and more electronics, semiconductors are being built, smart devices are being built, rare minerals, rare metals have become very, very important. Tell me one thing in the chat, although you do flood with it with the chat as well. But tell me this: why are they called rare minerals? Is it because it is very rare to find them? Why are some minerals called rare minerals? Is it very rare to find them? What do you think? Okay. Okay, you can now stop answering. You can stop answering now. I have a lot of responses already. You can stop answering now. Perfect, perfect, perfect. You can stop answering. Arey Baba. STOP. Stop. See, if you don't stop answering, what will happen is your own questions that you have actually put in the chat, they will get lost. So if you want your questions to be seen and answered, when I say stop, stop answering them. Okay. So I wonder, when you are driving your car or your bike, when you see the red light, do you even stop on the road, or you just basically go by and you are thinking, Arey, we'll give 100 rupees to sir, we don't have to stop. Anyway, let's come back. So basically, as I told you, SMEs will be very angry with me. I'm flooding this chat. Okay, so basically what happens is rare minerals or rare minerals are not rare to find. That is not why they are called rare. It is very rare to extract them. So most of them are found in their oxide form. So their oxides are found. From them to extract that is very difficult. That is why they call rare elements or minerals, and not because they are rare to find. They're found in large numbers, but to extract them is difficult. Also, do remember that the government of India's Samudrayan mission, as I said, will be a manned mission. Under this, 3 persons will be sent in the submersible mission. That vehicle will be called Matsya. Matsya is a Sanskrit word for fish. If you are from non-Hindi background, Matsya is a Sanskrit word for fish. So basically, Matsya 6000 will be the name. Why 6000? Because the aim is to reach till the depth of 6000 meters into the sea for deep water studies. That's the entire plan. It is a part of the Deep Ocean Mission. And with this, India has joined a club of other nations that have been conducting similar missions. There are nations such as Russia, US, France, China, Japan that have also been using this technology to go deep into the ocean and explore as many minerals as possible. This is the gist of this article from the Yojana magazine. Now, the question is, how is it the government of India is undertaking the study of deep ocean? Elaborate the significance of such studies. Now, a couple of things very quickly. I do see a lot of things being asked in the chat. One question that I keep on, that I'm actually seeing quite a lot is, do we need to read the entire magazine or would these videos be enough? So I have 2 or 3 suggestions for you. One, see, if you are one of those who are right now not preparing for the 2023 attempt, right? If you're one of those that are planning for 24 attempt, 25 attempt, meaning that you have a lot of time in your hand. So if you're one of those whose plan immediately is not to give the exam in the next attempt, but you have time, for you, I would suggest that yes, please do start reading the magazine completely so that you get a just you get understanding of how is it written, what are the important points, because you do have enough time. So if you're in that category, yes, go ahead with that. Now comes the second category of those who are planning to in the 2023 attempt only. What should they do? Now, there are 2 things that you can do. One, these webinars that we'll be bringing to you, we will try and make sure the important articles are covered first. Secondly, if you are still not satisfied, in your Byju's exam prep IAS website also there is a gist of Yojana in the text form, and Kurukshetra in the text form. You can refer to that also. The monthly current affair magazines that we have from Byju's site, they also have a gist of Yojana and Kurukshetra. So you can refer to any one of these, whichever pattern suits you. But I would advise you don't totally ignore them. Either read a summary or read a full, but do read them in some way or the other because they might be helpful. Because again, understand this, you are hoping to get a government job, and it is a government itself that is publishing those magazines. It is the source of information from the government itself. So why would we want to ignore that? So that is my logic, but try and see if you can actually see that. The word limit to these kind of questions can be 150. See, the word limit mainly depends on the number of marks that are allocated. If 10 marks are allocated to this, the word limit will become 150. If 15 marks are allocated to it, then it will become maybe 200 or 250. So when you practice this, I would advise you to practice this by writing 200 to 250 words. You can always come down. Okay, let me quickly see a few questions that have come up. Okay, I have a question, sir. Do such layers exist in the river? Not really, because rivers don't have so much depth. It's not that these layers are only for ocean. This is just a layer for the depth of water. Mostly rivers will never be this deep. So because they are never this deep, you don't really come across these different types of layers for them. Then I have a question. Can we explore these metals in oceans or for always beyond our EEZ, or is there a time limit? So basically, it's a pretty good question. We can only explore minerals in our EEZ, exclusive economic zone. Now, India is blessed to have a very big exclusive economic zone because not just our mainland coastline, but if you take an example of Lakshadweep, Andaman Nicobar Islands, then you actually draw the 200 nautical mile circle. So India has a very, very large exclusive economic zone. So we firstly have to explore it from there only. If we have to go into ocean, which is no man's land, which doesn't belong to any country, then we have to take permission from UN clause. But this mission that we are planning for, this will be in our exclusive economic zone only. Then I have a question. What is the difference between critical and rare earth minerals? They're usually said to be the same thing, but basically all rare earth minerals are not critical elements. Critical elements basically are the ones that are considered as critical by different nations for their development. There is no one definition. For example, India has a different list of critical elements, Australia has a different list, US has a different list. So the metals that they think are very, very crucial for them for their development in the long run, those kind of metals are called as critical metals by all of them. Okay, perfect. Perfect. Okay, and one more thing. Uh, see, a lot of you would have this question: is Yojana, Kurukshetra, are these magazines important for the mains exam or the prelims exam or what? So first of all, yes, they are mostly important for the mains examination because these kind of questions are very common in the mains examination, so that gives you a lot of content. However, it also has a lot of facts that can be asked in the prelims exam as well. For example, we just read about the Samudrayan mission, the Matsya 6000. These are different types of government schemes that you can actually see, so that will also be applicable, that will also be helpful for you. I have a question. Yojana magazine is also available on Byju's app. You have the Yojana Gist that will be available. Gist of Kurukshetra will also be available. Means short form of articles which you can read. So that is entirely up to you. As I said, you have the current affair magazine also that is available on the student portal. The monthly current affair magazine also has the gist of Yojana Kurukshetra at the end. So you can read it from there as well. If you prefer reading in the article form, that is entirely up to you. Okay. Perfect. So now let's jump on from Yojana to a bit of Kurukshetra. Now, the Kurukshetra magazine. Now, I'm sure all of you would know, and at least I hope that you know, if you have read these magazines, Yojana Kurukshetra, they are mostly themed magazines. Themed magazine means every edition has a theme that this edition's articles will be based on this specific theme. So it's a theme-based magazine, both Yojana and Kurukshetra. So the last Kurukshetra magazine that came out, the theme of that Kurukshetra magazine was science and tech. So Kurukshetra theme was science and tech mainly. So that is why next set of articles that you will see or next set of topics that we discuss in today's class mainly are from science and tech, not because of the fact that I like science and tech, but because the last Kurukshetra magazine, that theme was science and tech only. So we have taken up the most significant articles from there, which have a good probability of being asked in various forms, and you can use this data. So basically, the first article from the Kurukshetra magazine and the second article for today that I want to discuss is technology and innovation in healthcare. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, the times that we are living in, healthcare has come at the center of the government's focus in the entire world. We saw how the different nations reacted differently to the pandemic. We saw how even the most developed nations were not able to handle the load of the patients. Italy, which is very, very famous to have the best healthcare in the world in terms of government healthcare, they suffered very, very badly. US, all these countries suffered very badly. Now, what has happened now is most of the countries, including India, have moved on. For example, every single day, you still get the news that yesterday there were 600 cases of COVID in India, 1000 cases of COVID in India, but now we don't even pay attention. Now, compare this to what happened in the beginning of 2020. In the beginning of 2020, when the pandemic actually started, just remember when the news came in, there are 50 cases of COVID in India. We were terrorized that, oh, what will happen now? 50 cases. And now, when the Times of India news app, usually when you wake up in the morning, tells you yesterday 1000 cases were found, you never even pay attention because we have now realized it's a part of our life and we have to move forward. And we have found out a lot of things that can actually prevent COVID from happening, including the vaccine. However, not every country has moved forward. Look at China. If you are not aware of what is happening in China, China is still one of those nations that is following the zero COVID policy even today. Meaning that just like we were doing in 2020, when even one case was found. Remember, even one case was found, the entire society was locked up. There were barricades and no one was allowed to go anywhere. You could not enter the house, everything. That was so scary. It is still the same in China. China is still following the same zero COVID policy. They are still locking down their cities. They are still making sure that people don't go out. So there are different ways in which the nations are fighting against COVID even today. Now, in that, the debate around the healthcare has only strengthened. That in terms of healthcare, what exactly do we want to do? Healthcare has always been an important issue in government policy. Just that since 2020, it has taken an even bigger important role in terms of what has happened. So, this article of the Kurukshetra magazine does not really focus on COVID. It focuses mainly on technology and healthcare. So basically, this article is about how can technology be used more and more in healthcare? How can India become better when it comes to meeting our healthcare goals? So this is what this article is about. Now, they say that some new kind of techniques have come up. For example, virtual counseling has actually become much, much more common. Now, what is virtual counseling? There are so many apps now, private apps, where you can actually consult a doctor online, either on a video call, that is also possible, or on chat, that has also been possible now, or on phone. There are so many apps. I have also used them personally. They offer you an option that if you think that you can't travel to the doctor, because if you're alone, you are sick, you're in an area where doctors are not available, it's a weekend or whatever, there is always an option available of virtual counseling. That is the most basic use of technology that has come up. Interestingly, it started at the time of COVID. There's this very famous saying, necessity is the mother of all invention. Have you heard this? Necessity is the mother of all inventions. Meaning that when you actually are stuck in a situation where you have no other option, the only thing that you can do is actually find out something new and see that you can actually come out of this or not. It is only when it becomes necessary, it comes on your head, that you develop something new. So virtual counseling became very common at the time of COVID-19 pandemic. Then the government of India also has realized, and this is a reality, India has a huge gap in urban and rural healthcare infrastructure. I'm sure all of you are aware of it. In case you belong to a rural area, or your friend or family belongs to a rural area, you would know. Compare this to bigger cities or even tier 2 cities. The availability of doctors, the availability of hospitals, and the quality of doctors and hospitals is very, very different as compared to rural and the urban areas. Now, there are a lot of problems associated with this. I can't tell you one reason why this is happening, but there are so many reasons associated with this. For example, doctors mostly don't want to work in rural areas and they have their own reasons. Doctors say, why after so much studying, why it should be work in rural areas? Because number one, they say that people in the urban areas in cities can pay more as compared to rural areas. That is absolutely true. If there is a doctor that charges, let's assume there's a doctor that charges 500 rupees for a consultation. Now, these days, even 500 has become very, very uh, uncommon. It is 800,000 in metro cities. So, if there's a doctor that charges 800,000 rupees for a consultation, the doctor knows if he or she is sitting in Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Pune, he will have patients, no issues with that. But the same doctor knows if he goes in rural areas and if he charges the same amount, no one will come to him, because people have that constant of paying. So, number one, the doctors don't want to work in rural areas because the pay is not good enough. Secondly, there is no infrastructure. See, for critical things such as hospitals, the least that you require is 24/7 electricity. The least that you require is 24/7 water. Since that is still not available in a lot of village areas, in rural areas, you still have this issue of not having enough healthcare. Thirdly, the standard of living in the rural areas is also not up to the mark. In a lot of cases, you would have people not consulting the doctors, taking their own medicine, asking their friends and family. So there is still a huge gap in rural and urban healthcare, which the government has not been able to fulfill. And there are various reasons for that. See, in a country such as India, solving any problem will take a huge, huge step forward because of the scale of population that we have. The government of India doesn't have money lying around that they will just invest money and set up thousands of hospitals. That is not how it works. There is lack of good doctors as well in India. So how do you distribute them? Rural areas, urban areas, that is also a concern. Now, if you are from medical field, or if your friend or brothers or sisters are doctors, you would know the government of India had actually introduced a rule for MBBS doctors. The government of India had introduced a rule that if you have the MBBS degree, what happens is after the degree, if you have to take a license from the government. So government made a rule that after you pass your degree, you will only get the license if you work in the rural areas for 1 year or so. That was a rule that the government made. That was called compulsory rural posting. That compulsory, you have to actually work in the rural areas only. There was so much protest against this rule. The doctor said, no, 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 we can't do this. And doctors are not wrong in this. Okay, ignore the fact that, okay, for 1 year, they will not earn a lot of money. But see, when you say that a lady doctor should go and work in the rural areas, there is a lot of problem with that. There is no basic infrastructure for that. Lady doctors would need their own, at least they would need their own bathrooms and facility where they can reside. Even that is not present. So these kind of things that the government actually has introduced have not been met with proper policies. So on ground, we don't have these kind of policies. Now, yes, in the past few years, the situation has improved slightly, especially in the urban areas, with the use of technology coming in, with the use of new tools coming in, like Internet of Things, machine learning, a lot of data technology is coming in. But there is still a big gap. There is a still big contrast between urban and rural India. In urban India, India is still considered as the medical capital of the world in many cases. Medical tourism has become a very common thing in India. Have you heard of this? Medical tourism. Medical tourism. Medical tourism means people come in from outside India in large numbers to India for their treatment because they know the doctors in India are good. The expense is not that much, so they will actually be able to get very good healthcare facilities at a low price. Especially in India, the hub of medical tourism is Chennai and nearby areas. Many people come from very large number of countries, so Chennai, even Delhi, etc. Hospitals, and there are travel agencies that book the entire package. So India is working in this direction, but on the other hand, the rural healthcare is still a big problem. Now, in terms of use of technology, there is one other thing that we are working on. That thing is called EHR, that is electronic health record. Now, what is EHR, electronic health record? Let's try and understand this. See, it's simple. Let's say you have a disease. You went to a doctor, you got yourself treated. After that, 3-4 months pass or 1 year pass, and then you go to some other doctor. That doctor will tell you, show me your reports of the last doctor or show me your earlier reports, right? So what will happen? You are carrying your file everywhere. Now the other doctor will say, oh, that doctor was very bad. I don't know what test he has written. This report is bad. That report is bad. Do the test again. That's a very normal procedure. You go from doctor to doctor. You are being asked to undergo the test time and time again. You are being asked to spend that money time and time again. Your records are lost. You are not able to keep a track of them. So the solution to that can be electronic health records. What is this? The idea is very simple. Let's say you just have to give your Aadhaar number to the doctor. Doctor should have an app or a system. They should enter your Aadhaar number, and every record of the doctor, that is the previous doctor that you visited, what medicine did they prescribe, what test did you conduct, the report of those tests, all of that should display in front of the doctor. So rather than the doctor asking you, show me this report, show me that report, etc., and you carrying it around and misplacing it, there should be electronic health records that should be done. Now, Government of India is working in this direction. It's still in the pilot phase. The government is working in this direction, but it is still not implemented properly. There is a big issue with this also. Why is it that it is not being implemented properly is, see, health records are something which are very private to a person. When you upload all your health records on a specific portal, and if they get misplaced or misused, there is a very, very big chance of a blunder happening. For example, if you are, let's say, sick with a certain disease and you don't want the world to know about it, but your medical records are uploaded on a portal, and if they are hacked by someone, you can be very, very easily uh, terrorized. You can be very, very easily blackmailed when the person will say, I will show your records to other people, give me this money. This is the downside to technology. So government of India is still trying to figure this, and many people say that this idea of electronic health record might be very dangerous until we have proper safeguards of that depository. So having a single repository of medical records of all citizens is the aim of the National Digital Health Mission. That is what we are trying to do. But again, this has to be done with a lot of care, because you have seen how even the government websites are not free from the attack of hackers. Hackers these days are hacking into a lot of different types of systems. So that also is actually susceptible to the hackers. This kind of a system will especially be beneficial to the rural patients, because they are the ones who would have the most difficult time in actually storing those records, keeping them maintained, taking them from doctor to doctor. So for them, if you can give them this kind of a system where they don't have to save and keep their records, they can actually ensure that all of this is stored online. And with the help of Aadhaar, this is not very difficult to do now. Everything is linked to Aadhaar now. Your PAN number is linked to Aadhaar, your driving license, everything is linked to Aadhaar now. So once your medical records also are linked, it will become very, very easy. The one other thing, as I said, that has been in focus in India is remote healthcare, means using virtual and tele-mentoring or tele-counseling apps, where you don't have to visit a doctor. You just call them or you have a video call with them and they will help you. Now, the and you have to understand, this is not applicable for all the diseases. You might be suffering from some, let's say, skin disease, or you're suffering from, let's say, something wrong in your teeth. So for dentists, you always have to go. Obviously, there is no other alternative to that. When there is a skin infection, you have to go to a dermatologist, you have to show them the skin. But in many other cases, when you don't have to go, let's say you have fever, you have other kind of things where you just have to tell the symptoms. For them, for rural areas especially, they should not have to travel all the way to the urban areas, and they can use technology with the help of which they can actually treat them. An important part in this also has to be played by broadband connectivity. See, we have to understand, we cannot ignore the fact that all these apps, all these technologies will only become helpful when we have supporting broadband with it. If you don't have internet connectivity, even the best of app will not be able to do anything. So it's easy to say in the rural areas people would have this kind of technology, they'll use telecounseling, etc. But it will only be applicable if the government is actually able to provide broadband connectivity. For this, the government of India is working on the program called BharatNet. I'm sure many of you would have heard of it. BharatNet means where the government of India is trying to ensure that we cover all the villages in the entire country with high-speed broadband, with optical fiber cable. This is still a project that is ongoing from the government of India's side. So that has to be complemented along with this. Government of India is also focusing on satellite communication, that is giving internet through satellites. An example of this is a company called OneWeb. I don't know if you have heard of this or not. OneWeb is a company which is trying to provide internet connectivity through satellite. Airtel also owns a part of OneWeb. There are multiple companies together that are coming for this OneWeb idea. Airtel is also one of them. Now, in India, in the past few years, digital healthcare facilities have increased drastically. As I told you, there are a lot of machines that have become much more smarter. You can call them Internet of Medical Things. Internet of Medical Things means when machines, etc., can be programmed to perform certain operations. When machines can be programmed to perform certain healthcare functions, even sitting remotely. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but there are now a lot of instances where robots can actually perform surgeries. So there are cases when, let's say, there's a very famous doctor that has to perform the surgery. The doctor is in the US, the doctor can't come because he has his own patients there. But what may happen is, with the help of internet, with the help of robots, what will happen is that the doctor sitting in the US can actually ensure that he or she can perform surgery somewhere else. For that, you need to have smart machines. You need to have machines that are able to perform these kind of tasks. So government of India is working towards that along with other governments as well. The famous consulting firm McKinsey in the report said that telehealth, meaning online health, online virtual counseling, will actually grow into a very, very big industry because more and more people are now opting for this. See, many people don't want to go to a doctor for various reasons. Either you are too ill to go, or you just don't want to go to a doctor. Many people, even if they are ill, won't go to doctor. The first option is they will call their family, they'll call their friends, they'll ask them, you were also ill last month, right? What medicine did you eat? Tell me that medicine, I'll eat that medicine only. Or the other option that we have is we go to the medical store and we ask the medical store guy, whose only qualification, remember, the only qualification of the medical store person is that he can read the handwriting of the doctor. That is his only qualification. But we are very interested, or we are very uh, proud of the fact that this medical guy can actually give us the medicine. You will tell him what is wrong with you, and whatever medicine that he or she gives, you actually consume that. But we avoid going to doctor at any cost, whatever be the reason. So for that, we can actually have teleconsultation as a big boon. But again, these are the technologies that need to evolve in the future. The kind of question that you can expect from this part is, technology has the potential to solve a wide variety of India's rural healthcare challenge. Elaborate. Let's see if we can if we can write this. Let's try and write this in 200 words only. Give a lot of examples from what we have just read. Let me see a few questions from here. One question that I have is, recently there was a ransomware attack on AIIMS technical infrastructure. How government will protect the electronic health records? If you're saying how will they protect, I don't know because I'm not a tech person. That's still a work in progress. Not that the government has told us how will they protect. The government will only tell you that we will protect. For example, if I ask you, how is the government protecting the Aadhaar data? They will just tell you, we will protect with encryption, don't worry. But how, they will know, there is no word that has come out of it. But as I said, this is a major cause of concern. Not just India, even the most developed nations are facing this kind of a problem of hacking government infrastructure. In US, there are so many hacking attacks on very critical infrastructure, so every country is facing that issue. Then I have a question, what is the scope of blockchain technology in this? So basically what blockchain technology allows you to do is, it allows you to save information on many different machines, and it becomes very difficult, or it is almost impossible for any one person to change any information. That is what blockchain technology is, where the information is divided into various blocks spread across the entire world on different machines, and no one person has the right to change that information. So the authenticity of the data is maintained. Similar thing can be done in this, the healthcare records, etc., to ensure that they are not changed, they are not tampered with. The blockchain technology can ensure that we can save this information using that so that no one can tamper with it. Then I have a question, what is OneWeb? I gave an example. OneWeb is a company that is trying to bring satellite internet in India. Satellite internet is an idea where you don't have to have any wires right now. Right now, if you have internet connection at your home, you need wires through which your router is connected, right? Satellite internet would be through satellite, you will directly get signals in your phone, in your laptop. No need of any wire. This is done by Starlink, which is Elon Musk's company. In fact, I don't know if you know this or not, ever since Ukraine-Russia war started, Ukraine has actually been able to use internet because of that company called Starlink. I'll just write this question. Starlink basically is the company owned by Elon Musk that gives internet connectivity through satellite. So in India also, we are trying to bring in the same. It's a private company called OneWeb. It's a collaboration of many companies coming together. From India, there's Airtel. There are certain UK companies that are also involved working on this idea. Okay. Anything else before we move on? Okay. One more thing, very quickly. Okay. one question that I have is, how can we start these types of questions? What can be the introduction? See, the easiest introduction in any kind of question is either a definition or a fact. Now, give an example. Take an example of this question. Is there anything for which you can give a definition? Not really. There is no key word for which you can give a definition. So you can start with a fact. Now, fact can be, you can quote a fact about a government scheme. For example, you can talk about that the government of India has been focusing on introducing technology in healthcare, as can be seen from the National Digital Health Mission, which shows that government of India is serious towards solving the healthcare problem. Or maybe you can have another fact. If you have a fact about rural healthcare, for example, these many hospitals in rural areas are still lying vacant, or there are so many vacancies in rural hospitals in India, those kind of facts. So basically, either go with a definition or a fact. So in this kind of a question, there is no scope of giving a definition. So go ahead with a fact related to what has been asked. On that note, let's come back to the next question. So the next topic that we want to discuss is smart water future. That is an article again from Kurukshetra magazine of the last edition. Now, what exactly is this? What are they talking about? Let's try and understand this. Let's first see what is smart water. See, smart water is not that you are using technology in water. Water will remain water only. You are not changing water in any way. Smart water basically simply means it's more of a practice. That is intelligent use of water. Intelligent use of water. For example, conservation of water. Using it only when it is required, stopping wastage of water. Those kind of things are called smart water. Please don't think smart water is using of internet in water or something else is being used. No, that is not smart water. Smart water is just making better use of water. So this article from the Kurukshetra magazine talks about the problems of water globally and in India as well. Now, water is a huge issue that unfortunately we are not discussing as seriously as we should as a country and as the world. There have been multiple reports that have come out how many of India's cities will run out of water very soon. I don't know if you notice or not. If someone here is from Chennai, I'm sure you would know. Just a few years back, you saw how Chennai almost ran out of water. Did you see that? Just a few years back, Chennai actually ran out of water. There were orders given for all the companies, employees don't come to office, work from home, because office has no water. You had to work from home. So for many days, people had to work from home. They were not allowed to go anywhere because there was no water. Similarly, one other big country, I don't know if you have heard this or not, at the same time, a few years back, one big city actually ran out of water. That city was in South Africa. Can you give me the name of that city? Name of the city that ran out of water. Very big city. Yes, Cape Town. Cape Town ran out of water. It's a big South African city. It actually ran out of water once again. So this is again an issue that we are facing around the entire world. This is an issue that is being faced around the entire world. That is the shortage of fresh water. Now, there are two things that you have to understand. People say that, see, over 3/4 of the earth is made up of water. How can we run out of water? But that is an illogical way of thinking. 3/4 of the earth is made up of water. Out of that entire water, not even 1% is fresh water. The problem is that, see, you can't go to Antarctica and say, let me bring ice from Antarctica, let me bring the iceberg at my home. I will melt that iceberg and then I will drink water. You can't do that, can you? But you are in India, so you have to use water that is available to us. You are not in Antarctica, you are not in Arctic. So most of the water in the entire world is still frozen. That is of no use to us. So what is of use to us is fresh water. So this logic that over 3/4 of the earth is anyways water, what is the problem in water? There is always a lot of it. No, that is not the real problem. The problem is the fresh water supply. Fresh water, the water that is underground, that is actually useful for us, that is running out. It's not the other water. So basically, if you look at the entire world scenario, the Kurukshetra article tells us about 1.1 billion people worldwide lack access to great water. Not just this, 2.7 billion people find water scarce for at least 1 month in a year. Close to 2 million people, mostly children, die each year from diarrheal diseases alone. And it is estimated by 2025, two-thirds of the world's population may face water shortages. The scenario is very bad around the world, including in India. The Niti Aayog report a few months back came out, and it said a lot of Indian cities will run out of water in the coming years. It included big cities, including Delhi, etc., as well. So the problem of water is a huge, huge issue, and there are a lot of reasons behind it. Yes, some reasons are beyond our control. We cannot do anything with them. But there are a lot of reasons which are in our control as well. For example, India right now, the issue is the population that we have as compared to the freshwater resources that we have. Both of these are actually not complementary to each other. We have a huge population. As compared to that, the freshwater resources that we have are not that high. For example, India has about 16% of the world's population. But when it comes to freshwater resources, about 2% of that is in India, of the entire world. So there is a great mismatch between the two. The per capita annual availability of water in India is very, very low, and it is only decreasing. It will even decrease further by 2050. Our demand for water will go up as more and more population increases. The demand for water will only keep increasing. Now, because of this, a lot of things have happened. For example, in a lot of cities, I don't know if you know this or not, in a lot of cities, washing of car, for example, by water is not allowed. Those hand pumps that we used to have, they are not allowed in most parts of the country. All of that is to conserve fresh water. Now, one other problem that we have is we don't really use wastewater perfectly well. For example, the water with which you wash your hands, after that it is just thrown out. It is not used properly. I'll give you two very interesting examples so that you understand what the other parts of the world are doing and what can we do. First example, in Japan. So in Japan, it is compulsory that if you, let's say, wash your hands, the water that is actually then used, it goes into that toilet storage tank that you have. So when you actually flush your toilet, that is the water that comes out. So you are using that water again. The hands that you have washed, that water which has soap, etc., that does not go into the drain. That actually goes into the flush tank. When you flush it, that is when it is used again. It's compulsory in Japan. In India, the new societies that are being built, the new developed societies, they are using this kind of a system, but it is still not available in most parts of the country, number one. Second, I'll give you a very interesting example of USA. So USA, for example, what they do is they have realized the fact that in a lot of our taps, we don't need high pressure water. Take an example of wash basins. So when you go to wash basins, you want to wash your hands. And when you switch on the wash basin, you open up the tap. In full flow, a lot of water comes out all of a sudden. You have also seen how you don't require a lot of that water, right? You just wash your hands and then you switch it off. But even if the water flow is half of that, you will be able to wash your hands. But we usually open it up in full flow. So what has happened is in US, for example, there is a law. There is a proper law that in wash basins, in toilet flush tanks, etc., in showers also, there is only specific amount of pressure which will be in the water. The water will not come at very high pressure in showers, in wash basins in the US. That is a law that they have made. Why? So that they can actually prevent misuse of water. In India, there is no such law. You switch on the shower and you basically keep on putting your soap. The shower is still on and there is no problem with that because there is no compulsion. Same with the wash basins, etc. So that also has to be curtailed. That also has to actually come down, which is not happening in India, because of which there is a lot of waste water that we see right now. The per person disease burden because of unsafe water in India is very, very high, meaning that number of people that fall ill because of very bad quality water is very, very high in India. That is also an economic cost on us. Now, this is where smart water comes into picture. Now, what is smart water? In simple terms, smart water, as I said, means management and distribution of water while maintaining its quality. So you don't have to degrade the quality of water. You have to just make sure it is as pure as it is, but you have to use it in the best possible manner. This is where there is also one concept called non-revenue water. Now, what is non-revenue water? Non-revenue water simply means that this water is not earning any revenue for the government. Yes, most of the water given by the government is free, but non-revenue water means it is not even being used by people and it is not being actually earning any revenue for the government. How? Due to leakage as well. We ignore the fact that there is huge leakage of water in the country due to pipe burst, leak pipe, etc. Now the problem is, see, when the government has, let's say, put out all these pipes in the entire city, kilometers and kilometers of pipe to transport water, the problem is these pipes, these infrastructure, these are all old infrastructures. Over the years, there is rusting in those pipes. Over the years, the pipes start to leak, but the government doesn't really fix it up. There are various reasons for that. It's not that easy. You have to check where the leakage is. I'm sure in your city, whichever city you are living in, be it the best or the most biggest metro cities of India, or if you live in tier 2, tier 3 cities, in every city, you will see on the roads somewhere the sewer is leaking, somewhere the pipe is leaking, somewhere the tap at the public place is switched on and no one is switching it off. All of that actually adds to this and becomes non-revenue water. And the interesting part is this is not just a problem in India. If you watch US news stories, if you follow US politics, in US also it is a big issue. Political parties have been demanding revamping of infrastructure because in US also water pipes, bridges, flyovers, these are very old now. They were built 100, 150 years ago. So all of that is deteriorating and it requires a lot of investment to come in. From India also this is the same problem. The World Bank report says India utilizes in 2012 faced huge distribution losses, or India's utility, sorry, faced huge distribution losses in water because of non-revenue water. It was leaking. 40 to 70% of the water actually distributed never gave any use to anyone. End consumers did not use it. Government did not earn any money from it. It was all water lost. That is all in the category of non-revenue water. Non-revenue water means not being used by anyone, not earning any revenue for the government, is just leaking. There are 4 basic leakage management activities that can be undertaken. What can the government do? Number 1, pressure management. The example of the US that I gave. Reduce the pressure. Like in showers, wash basins, make a law that you can only have this much pressure of water. Active leakage control. Whenever you have any news or anyone tells you that there's a leakage of water pipe, fix it immediately. Speed and quality of repairs has to be improved, and the pipe maintenance and renewal has to be done at a much larger scale. All these initiatives have to be undertaken by the government if we have to reduce the wastage of water in the country. Now, since the Yojana magazine is about technology, this theme is technology based, so they have also told how can we use technology in all of this. How exactly that we can use technology in ensuring the lesser wastage of water. As I told you, first, the example of US regulating the pressure, making sure that only a specific amount of pressure is allowed in certain water outlets. That is also a use of technology. The other use of technology mainly where the country actually has a problem is the leakage of pipes. Because understand this, the entire city is full of pipes and pipelines for water. There are hundreds and thousands of kilometers long pipelines. So it is not easy if there is a leakage to find out where the leakage is and to repair it. So it's easy for us to say that it should happen, but it's not that easy. This is where we can use technology. We can use drones and satellite images to map water resources to see where the leakage is happening. We can use machines and geographic information system, means with the help of satellite imagery, we can see where the water clogging is happening, where we can see if there is a place where without rain, there's a lot of water that has actually accumulated. There's a muddle, then there has to be a water pipeline leakage somewhere. So action can be taken there as well. Mobile phones can also be used by the people to provide real-time data. So People, citizens should also get an option. If they find something wrong, they can, let's say, click a photo, they can report some water loggage, so that that can also be taken into consideration. Then there's one more issue. Smart meters have to record the customer water usage. In most parts of the country, you don't have to pay any water bill. There are some parts of the country in metro cities where you do pay water, but in most parts of the country, you should still don't pay any water bill. Water is considered by most people as free of cost. Use whatever or however you want. There is no compulsion to that. That has to change. When something is assumed that it is for free, people never value it. The only reason, you also know, the only reason you switch off your air conditioner when you go outside is because you have a bill to pay. You also know, tomorrow if I tell you there's no electricity bill to pay, you will never switch off your AC, will you? People will never switch off their TV, they will never switch off anything, because they say, oh, there is no bill that is coming, let me do whatever I want. This is where we have to understand, for water also, there has to be smart meters. Smart meters means that tell exactly how much water a person has used, so that you can actually understand what is the usage of water. Then we have to use augmented reality technologies to support decision making. Augmented reality technology means, before building any infrastructure, you can imagine how that infrastructure will look with the help of augmented technology, so that you can actually first decide if that infrastructure would be fine or not. Over here, let me give you an example of something that has proved to be successful. That is an example from Karnataka. Now, in Karnataka, what happened was, there was a project run by the Karnataka Urban Water Sector. This project was funded by the World Bank. What was this project? This project was to ensure that non-revenue water, means the water that is wastage, that reduces. And they were able to reduce the wastage of water from 50% to 7% only. Now, what did they do? They actually collaborated with technology companies such as Google, etc., to give them real-time information of where the water is leaking, so that they can actually fix it up as soon as possible, because of which the water wastage was reduced. Similarly, there are examples of, at the national level, Central Water Commission is again collaborating with Google to give real-time information about these kind of things, or different models where they can find how the water is leaking, where the water is leaking, they can fix it up. Government of Kerala also is doing a similar kind of a platform, where they have flood related damages that happen at certain areas. They are preparing a report for that, so that they can actually fight against that. And then IIT Madras students are also developing a tool in this direction. They are just some examples of how exactly are the governments across the country fighting against it. You don't have to remember all these examples. Even if you remember one or two, that would be good enough. That is how the government is trying to fight against this as well, to reduce the waste water in the country, or non-revenue water. This is the kind of question that you can expect. What is smart water? How fair is it to say that problem of water is not the lack of it, but incorrect usage and tracking? Let me see a few questions. One question: will India be facing water shortage by 2025? If yes, then which state? Yes, India will be facing, most of India. Delhi, Chennai, Hyderabad. There are many cities that came in the report of Niti Aayog. Mostly they were North Indian cities. There was state of Punjab, Haryana that one named, where mostly there was paddy cultivation, where a lot of water comes out. So yes, a lot of cities will face water shortage in India. Then I have a comment: quarter trillion economy. I don't know what your question is. You have to tell me what your question is. Quarter trillion economy, what? Quarter trillion means $250 billion economy. I don't know what your question is. Then I have a question. Now technology can change salt water into fresh water. Then what is the cause of concern? Because you don't see this technology available as often as you think. See, understand something. Just because you see a video on YouTube or a documentary on Google that this technology has been invented, which can now purify water, or purify, let's say, salt water, turn it into fresh water, that doesn't mean it's so easy to buy and implement. Yes, nation in the Middle East, Israel, Saudi Arabia, UAE, they use their entire water, or they get the entire water from desalination only. But it's not that easy as you are thinking. Those machines that you're talking about, how will they run? They will run on electricity only. How will you produce that electricity? Do you know how many machines would you need? How will you produce that electricity? Even then, even if you set up these desalination plants in the coastal areas, how will you transport water all the way? If Delhi is not near the river, it's not near the sea, then what will you do? So it's not as easy as it seems. Yes, there are desalination machines that are available. Indian government also has it. Our big navy ships have desalination machines. They take water from the ocean wherever they are going, they purify it, then they drink it. But to do it on such a scale, to provide for 135 crore people, is almost next to impossible. Bhanu is saying drones can be used to provide data for mapping water resources. Here, mapping water resources means, mapping water means drawing a map of where important water resources are so that we can plan accordingly. Simple. Sumitra is saying, why don't we set up desalination plant? As I told you, not as easy as it seems. Desalination plants, where will you set up? How will you then transfer all the water to everywhere? Not an easy technology. Again, how will you run those plants? They also require a lot of energy, so it's not as easy. Obviously, the last option will be that you have to go ahead with that only. It's not that that technology will go out, but understand this: when you have to provide for 135 crore people, thinking that I'll set up some plant that will just purify water, that is not really the real solution. So yes, that is the solution that is being used in many cases, but not something that you can actually imagine on such a large scale. Ashutosh is saying, can Internet of Things be used here in smart water management in at least capable homes? It can be used in capable homes, but see, the problem is when you say, I will use Internet of Things in my home, if you are saying this, you can. But again, if you are dependent on the citizens only to take steps, then it will become difficult. It has to come from the side of the government. If you leave it on the citizens, citizens who want to save water will save it anyway without smart water, without any smart instrument. If I am aware that I want to save water, for example, I don't need smart home. I can switch off my shower. I can switch off my wash basin. I will save it anyway. The problem is, if people don't want to do this, if they are not aware, then the government has a responsibility. That is the problem. If you're saying citizens can do it at their houses, they can do that. Smart citizens who want to save water can save it even today. They don't need smart homes. It is just for what the government can do. Perfect. Okay, so let's move on to the next topic that we have from the Kurukshetra magazine. This is a very, very important and interesting topic because questions from this part are asked in various different forms. That is, science and technology towards women empowerment. Women empowerment has always remained one of those topics from where UPSC has asked multiple questions in social issues, society, that is GS1, GS2. Then you even have essay topics a lot of times being associated with this. In GS4 also, you have a lot of questions associated with women, women empowerment kind of things. So it's always good to make a lot of notes about women empowerment in different fields in India's history and present, because these kind of questions are asked very, very, very commonly. Now, as I told you, since the magazine is focused on science and technology, so the entire article is based on the role and the participation of women in the field of science and technology in India. Now, it's fair to say that irrespective of whichever party is in power, BJP, Congress, or Janata Dal, whatever, all of them talk a lot about women empowerment. All of them talk a lot about women participation. Now, if you look at India, and I don't know if you have seen the gender index or not, if you actually see the world reports that come out about gender gap, which are the countries which have a lot of gender gap, women empowerment, India usually does not score very well. But there is one aspect of this, of entire women empowerment debate, where India has always scored very well. That is political empowerment of women. Why? Because India is one of the few countries in the entire world that gave the right to both men and women at the same time. We did not differentiate, number one. Secondly, when it comes to right to fight elections, again, we gave the right to men, women at the same time to fight elections. We have never differentiated between two, but other countries have in the past, even the most developed nations. So, in terms of political empowerment, yes, the women have had a great role to play. India right now, because of the one-third women reservation in panchayats and municipalities, India right now holds the world record for having the largest number of women in elected offices in the entire world. No other country has so many women at elected positions in the world because we have this reservation in panchayats and municipalities. Now, this is the good side of the story. Women empowerment, women representation, giving their rights, all that is fine. But the fact is that one area, one field where women have remained underrepresented, underutilized to a very large extent is science and technology. Even today, or even if you see in the past, when you talk about great scientists or learned scientists in India, the people who have contributed a lot to our scientific community, mostly you will talk about male scientists. You hardly will ever see any name of a women scientist coming up. That is why there is a need to give push to that aspect as well. Now, Prime Minister Modi recently had actually said that we have to look at Nari Shakti in law, education, science, police, etc., where they are making great contributions. So, Government of India, yes, they have been focusing on empowering more women, having them enter this kind of a field, but it is very, very rare again because of various reasons. See, entering the field of science and science research is not everyone's cup of tea. Even amongst males, not a lot of people want to come to science and research because it is a field which requires a lot of patience. Initially, it might not even give you a lot of money. It is a lot of hard work. You have to study a lot. And this is where you see a lot of women don't participate. Why? The one big issue that we have is when it comes to education, women have to make a choice. In most of the families in India, and this is true with even the urban areas, in most of the families, it is very, very rare for a woman to pursue education after marriage also. You also agree with this? Yes, more and more women are taking up jobs after marriage. That is good. But if you talk about women who are actually taking up education after marriage, you also know this is very, very rare. Even in the metro cities, even in the rural, in the urban areas also, you don't see a lot of women studying after they have actually been married. Now, the problem is when you have to come in the field of research, you have to study for many years. See, you can become a graduate by 21 years, 22 years, or if you're at a 3-year degree, then maybe 20 years also. You can have post graduation by 23, 24 years. That is also fine. Then many people think I'll do a job, I'll get married. But when you are entering the field of research, then you have to study till the age of at least 30, 32 in many cases if you have to pursue PhD, then MPhil, etc. For that, again, the age becomes a barrier because once the woman actually gets married, there's a very, very little chance that she might pursue education. That is where the research field actually sees a much lesser participation from women. Now, this is a problem globally and not just in India. Globally, also look at the number of women scientists that have gotten Nobel Prize, for physics. Look at the number of scientists that have been getting different types of honors around the world. You will see they are very, very rare. So let's not just blame India for that. For example, there are multiple steps taken by international organizations like the UN Conference of Women in Mexico marked 1975 as an International Women's Year. But see, the problem is UN marking this year as that year, like 2023 is a world year for millets. But just saying that this is the world year for this or that will not really change anything on ground unless the policies are made to change on that matter. Then, even in 1995, the World UN Conference on Women talked about gender equality, etc. But again, these are mostly talks and nothing really happened. Let's talk in terms of India. In India, sadly enough, or unfortunately, from 1950s to the 2000s, we did not see a lot of women participation in science and tech. There was very little women participation. It was mostly a male-dominated field. For example, from 1960s to 80s, number of women who actually got leadership positions were very minimal in the 3 national academies of science. Very, very minimal. Mostly they were male scientists only. As I said, because of the fact that they had to study for longer durations, which was not really possible or feasible for women scientists specifically. The famous Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize, it was started in 1958, was awarded to only 8 women researchers until the early years of the 21st century. That also goes to show that the women participation in science and technology has not risen up as it has in politics, as it has in many other fields in the private sector also. But in science and tech, it is still very, very low because, as I said, the barriers are very high. The first focus of government from the side of women actually came up when Dr. M.S. Swaminathan. Have you heard this name? Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, by the way, famous for what exactly? Any idea? Famous for what? Yes, famous for Green Revolution. Famous for Green Revolution. Very famous person in India's history. He initiated a chapter on science and technology for women in the 6th five-year plan. This was the beginning of government now realizing that we have to ensure more women participation in the field of science and tech only. That was the first time a prominent male was coming up and taking the side of women, that we have to empower women in the field of science and technology. Then in the beginning of 21st century, the things started to change with first the Vajpayee government saying that no, we will have to work towards bringing more women into science and technology, and then UPA government and now the Modi government also working in this field. Now, what have they done exactly? Let's try and understand what have they done and how are they empowering women. See, the biggest issue with women was, I'll tell you what, the biggest issue with and the issue why women were not able to pursue research was, let's assume there is a woman who got married, okay? Even after marriage, let's assume she continues her education. In the chat also, I saw there was a lady who said that I did my postgrad after marriage. Great, you are in minority, but very good. I'm very happy for you. So what happened was, let's say the women got married, they continue education, but the problem is if they get pregnant, then in pregnancy obviously they'll have to take some leave. They, let's say, take leave for not the entire duration, let's say 3 months, 4 months, they take leave, they are not coming. Then what happens is when they come back after that, either they are not in touch with what happened when they were gone, or the other scientists in the team think, oh, she was gone, now she's coming back, she's out of touch, we don't want her in the team. So there was a lot of disconnect in that. Whenever the women had to take leaves for family duties, be it pregnancy, be it marriage, etc., and when they used to come back, there was a great disconnect there, which is what the government actually had focused on. And the government has launched certain schemes for that. I'll give you an example of that also. So government has actually ensured that women who come back after that family break, for whatever reason, they are able to actually come back into research much more smoothly, because government found out that that was a major reason which was actually pushing the women back and not allowing them to enter into the field of science and technology. The government of India launched science and tech policy in 2003, specifically saying that we have to empower the women and ensure that we have to have equal participation as well. How? By giving them more chances, by ensuring that they are able to come back to research. Let me give you example of a few government initiatives. First, there was a national task force for women in science that was made in the year 2002. This task force was created specially to give advice to the Prime Minister of how to have more women in the field of science and technology. Then, this task force gave these recommendations to the government. For example, recruit more women scientists, have more women scientists in the selection committee, have better training for them. Also, one thing that we don't really pay a lot of attention to, this point is true not just for women in research, but women in every sector. If you have a question on, when the mains exam, whenever you have a question about why is the women participation low in any sector, this point is valid in all those sectors. That is, the workplaces are not women friendly. A few months back, our Chief Justice of India, Chief Justice of India made a statement where he said that it is very unfortunate that if you look at the local judiciary in India, Let's not look at the Supreme Court and the High Court. Supreme Court, High Courts are still much better in infrastructure. If you go beyond the High Courts, you will see most of the courts in India don't even have separate washroom for women. How do you expect even women lawyers or women judges to come and work in those areas? This is a problem. The problem of not having adequate women workplaces is a problem in every sector in the country. It's not just about science and tech, it's not just about one laboratory, etc. It's a problem even in the biggest government infrastructures. The Supreme Court Chief Justice himself said that most of the judicial infrastructure in India does not even have women specific washrooms. So how can you expect the situation to improve? Similarly, once a woman actually gives birth to a child, by default, it becomes her responsibility to take care of the child. Now, when the woman has to take care of the child, there is an option to either leave the child at home and come to work, which she would not do. The other option is bring the child with herself. Now, when you bring the child with yourself, the only option you have is at your workplace, you should have a crèche. Crèche means basically a place where the children will be taken care of. Many of the workplaces for women don't have any availability of creche. There is also a problem against that. So all these issues have to be taken into consideration. This was a suggestion from this task force. Another suggestion was to promote scientific temperament amongst among girl students. Now, just to tell you here, there is a initiative by the government of India that is actually working well. I don't know if you know this or not. There is something called Atal Innovation Mission or Atal Tinkering Labs, basically. Have you heard this or not? There's Atal Tinkering Labs, ATL. So what the government has done is in many schools across the country, they have set up Atal Tinkering Labs, kind of labs where students can go experiment, see if they want to find out some new ideas, experiment with new things, so that scientific temper can develop. They can basically have a more interest in science. So that also is something the government is doing. This is a part of Atal Innovation Mission. So under Atal Innovation Mission, this is happening. New policies have to be made to focus on maternity leave. These were some of the suggestions that the task force gave to the government of India. Then there are also schemes such as Women Scientist Scheme called WOS. Now, this Women Scientist Scheme has two most important parts. First part of the scheme is to provide opportunity to women researchers who have taken a break in the career. As I told you earlier, the government is focusing on those women who have taken a break in their career for their family responsibility. So women who have taken a break in their career, if they want to come back, they will help them in coming back to research. The same scheme also says support will be given to women. Grant support means financial support, basically. Financial support will be given to women scientists for developing science and tech solutions to grassroots problems. The government of India is also running one more program called the Curie program, Curie. This is Curie, not Madam Curie, although the name is derived from her only, but there is a full form of Curie. Curie here stands for Consolidation of University Research for Innovation and Excellence in Women Universities. So as you know, the government is very fond of full form and short forms. So they have a Curie scheme also, especially to focus on building women universities where they don't have any discrimination, where they would not have any issues, and they can actually research at a much, much better scale. Then we have the mobility scheme also, which allows the women to relocate due to marriage. One other big problem is, see, if two people get married and they are living in different cities with different jobs, by default, it is assumed that the women will leave the job and shift to the other city. We assume this by default. The women will leave the job, shift to the other city, and that also becomes a problem in their career, because if they have to forcefully shift their city, then what will they do? All their research will go to waste. So government is working again in favor of that also. There's a mobility scheme which offers that government labs or government research facilities will allow them to relocate from one place to the other place as well due to marriage, transfer, etc. These are some of the government schemes that we have seen from the side of the government to give a push to women participation in science and tech. There are some other initiatives also, very recent initiatives, like Vigyan Jyoti program by Department of Science and Technology to give more exposure to young girls who are interested in science and tech. Then we have the National Day for Science with the theme of Women in Science. So Government of India is making all these multiple initiatives, hoping that they will be able to encourage more and more women in the field of science and technology. This is a kind of question that you can actually have. Critically analyze the role of women in the field of science and technology in India. It's a very wide question. You can actually write a lot of things, write about government initiatives as well in this question. Try and write this in 250 words. Women empowerment in any field, be it science and tech, politics, economics, has always been one of the very commonly asked questions by the UPSC, so don't ignore that as well. Gayatri saying, why are we not talking about fraternity leave? It's father's responsibility. We do have fraternity leave. That is not called fraternity leave. That is called paternity leave. So don't think that fathers don't take care of the child. That is called paternity leave. So we do have leave for fathers as well. Don't worry about that. Your husband, if he says that I'm not able to take a leave, tell him I know there is something called paternity leave. If he says there is nothing like that, he's lying to you. So don't worry, we do have something called this. We don't have fraternity leave, but yes, there is paternity leave. Okay, any other questions in this before we move ahead? Okay, perfect. Okay, got it. So the next article that I want to discuss again from the Kurukshetra magazine, from the part of Science and Tech, is non-conventional energy resources. Energy resources, environment, all of this has been a big theme of the entire world in the past few decades. We just saw the UNFCCC COP27 being concluded, where the entire world came together to talk about how can we actually save the world from global warming, etc. One thing that we keep on focusing on is non-conventional energy resources. That is, non-conventional energy resources means those resources of energy from where or which do not really deplete very fast. For example, coal, natural gas are conventional sources of energy, because when you use them, to refill them it will take many decades, even centuries. On the other hand, solar, wind, geothermal, etc., they don't deplete as such. So they are called non-conventional sources of energy. Non-conventional sources means that don't deplete with time. So the reason why this is in the news is, number one, because of this UNFCCC, the climate change debate. Also, the great part is, if you look at India's record in the past few years, I would say the last decade or so, India has made great progress in solar energy. If you actually have been reading this, you would know India actually is now the fourth largest producer of solar energy in the entire world. We have the fourth largest producer of solar energy in the entire world. The cost of production of solar energy has come down now considerably. It is much cheaper now to buy solar panels, to buy solar cells, to use that in your houses. Government has also given a push towards this. So the question of conventional and non-conventional sources of energy is a big debate where India is performing really well, mostly as compared to other countries around the world. Now, non-conventional source of energy, as I told you, are mostly renewable source of energy that don't really deplete. They can be replenished. Either they don't deplete anyway, or they can be replenished very fast. They are regarded as clean source of energy also. There is one more thing I want to point out here. A lot of students have a misconception in their mind. A lot of students think that natural gas is a clean fuel, which is not the case. Please do remember, just because the name has the word natural doesn't mean it is a clean fuel. Natural gas also has greenhouse gas emissions. It is not a non-conventional source. Natural gas is not renewable source of energy. Just because it pollutes lesser than coal, that is the only good part. The pollution level of natural gas is not as high as the coal. That is something that we will accept. But please don't do this mistake of thinking that natural gas is clean or natural gas doesn't pollute. No, that is not the case. It also pollutes. Does that? See, any kind of gas that you actually see that is being taken out, that will pollute, natural gas, etc., will pollute. So it's not that they will not pollute entirely. Now, the non-conventional resources, as I said, have been extremely important because as the entire world is now searching for renewable energy, as the entire world is searching for alternatives to save our environment, this is the only way forward. The problem with this kind of a resource, this kind of a energy is it is, or it used to be very, very costly. It is still costly in many cases, but it used to be very, very costly earlier. For example, making solar panels, solar cells, now it's still affordable. But earlier it was very, very costly. Why? Because see, when you produce something on a large scale, the cost will automatically come down. So as more and more countries, as more and more people adopt solar technology, the cost will come down automatically. It will become much more affordable. It is becoming better for India at least. But around the world, if you see, developing nations are still having a very, very hard time in actually using these sources. See, there's a great irony. If you, I don't know if you have realized this or not, there's a big irony in this. The irony is the poor nations, the developing nations that have a lot of sunlight, they don't have money to use this technology to make solar panels, to actually generate solar energy. On the other hand, the developed nations in Europe, for example, when they have the money, they have the capacity, they don't have sunlight, so they can't do anything by making a lot of solar panels, and there is no match in between. Most of the European nations, they don't get a lot of sunlight, so for them solar energy is not that feasible. That is why in Europe you would see wind energy is something that they focus much more on. France, UK, these are some of the biggest wind energy producers in the entire world. There was a lot of wind energy. In India, we focus a lot on solar energy. So developing nations have been asking the developed world, give us the money, give us your expertise, share your technology so that we can now move towards a cleaner energy as well, as is being discussed at the international stage as well, that we want to transition. Now, as I said, there are multiple examples of non-conventional source of energy. Let's first talk about solar, because solar is where India is performing very, very well. As I said, we have already become the fourth largest producer of solar energy in the entire world, and we'll only go higher. The good part with India is we have a lot of sunlight. We are a tropical country. Our geographical location actually makes it very easy for us to have solar energy. That is why, and I'm sure all of you know, India also launched the idea of International Solar Alliance, right? Okay, tell me a couple of things about International Solar Alliance very quickly. Tell me one question. See, when I said developed nations lack sunlight, there is no connection between development and sunlight. That is not what I meant. I meant the geographical location of the European countries. They don't have a lot of direct sunlight. That is what I meant. There is no direct connection between development and sunlight. The more you develop, the lesser sun will say, no, no, I will not come. That is not how it works. What I meant to say was that the geographical location of European countries do not really have a lot of sunlight. Okay. Now, okay, before I ask the question, many people are already giving me the answer. First question, okay, that many people are giving the answer to. Its headquarters is in Gurugram. Yes. It is the first international agency, first international organization to have its headquarters in India. Yes. Let me ask you one more question here. Let me ask you one more question. The question is, can only tropical countries become members, or is it open to every country now? What do you think? Can only tropical countries become members or every country? Yes. Okay. Every country can become a member now. Okay, you can stop answering now. Stop. Arre, stop, Baba. Every nation can now become a member of this. It was earlier open to tropical countries only mainly, but now every country can become a member. Now, what is the idea behind this? The idea is simple. The idea is the nations that have a lot of sunlight, mostly the tropical nation that have a lot of sunlight, they can come together to exchange technology, to exchange knowledge about how can we actually make use of technology. I'll give you a very interesting example. If you are, is there anyone from Rajasthan here? Anyone who is from Rajasthan here? Okay, we have a few people from Rajasthan. Okay, so if you're from Rajasthan, you might have heard of a place called Tilonia. If you're not from Rajasthan, maybe you have not heard of this name. There's a place called Tilonia. I don't know if you've heard of it or not. Okay, if you are from Rajasthan, I'm sure you have heard of Tilonia. If you're not from Rajasthan, don't worry. I'll tell you what Tilonia is. So basically, Tilonia is a village near Ajmer. So what is great in Tilonia? So what is great in Tilonia? And I've been there personally. I've lived there for 2-3 days, so I've seen this how it works. So what happens is there is a very famous NGO called Barefoot College. So Barefoot College is the name of an NGO. It's an NGO called Barefoot College. So what they have done is they have kind of adopted Tilonia. So what they have done is in that village of Tilonia, they have trained almost everyone. Most of them are illiterate. They have trained everyone. Most of them. So they are women who have never even gone to school. They all know how to make solar panel. They know how to make solar cookers. They know how to make solar cells. They know how to make solar lamps. Everything they know. And what happens is the government of India runs a collaboration with many least developed nations from Africa. So every year, many poor women from Africa come to India, especially stay in Tilonia for about 20 days or 1 month. They learn from the village women in Tilonia. They teach them how to make solar cells, how to make solar panel. And it's such a fascinating thing to see because women in Tilonia, they don't know their language. African women, they don't know their language. So no one is speaking anything. So what happens is, if you actually see, there is a long table where 10 women from that village will be sitting, they will be working, and 10 African women sitting there, and they are seeing what are they doing. There is one translator that is available, but they hardly speak. They just see what is happening. It's such a fascinating thing to see how knowledge is being transferred from one place to the other. The idea is that these women, when they go back to their villages, they come from some of the poorest countries in the entire world in Africa. They don't have electricity in most of the villages. When they will go back, the expectation is they will teach the other people. There are old women, 50, 60 years old, that have come. So if you get a chance, I would really advise you to visit this place. They also have a kind of a, I won't say guest room, but they have a place to stay. They have 1 or 2 rooms where you can stay. It's an amazing village. They have a lot of great things. It's not just the solar panel. They have actually set up their own small hospital also, where women and men have been given training for first aid. The doctors come from outside. They train them for 1 month or 2 months that this is what you have to do. This is what you have to do. That entire village has saved up so much water. That is what it told me. They have saved up so much water that even for 2 years, if they don't get any water, then nothing will happen to them. So water harvesting they have done, everything there. It looks like a normal village, but when you go inside of it, you will see, oh, this is absolutely something entirely different. So this is a very small scale thing that is happening. It's very small. You can visit it. It's easy to actually go. You go to Ajmer till train, and then you can take tempo or auto, whatever. So basically what happens is, this is a small scale experiment. The same thing the government of India wants to do on a larger scale. This will be International Solar Alliance. So International Solar Alliance would be countries coming together, sharing their expertise, sharing their technology. One country that have, let's say, experiment with something, got it successfully, teaching the other country. That is the idea. Now, if you ask me, has something good come out of it? Nothing so far. It started, or it was launched in Paris Climate Change Summit in 2015. There are some initiatives that have come out of this, like One Sun, One World, One Grid, but it's all in the name. Nothing really has translated on the ground, because whenever you ask the government why nothing has happened, they will reply the same thing: money. No money, no money, no money. So they are right now waiting for funding from World Bank and these kind of banks so that they have more money to research, etc. But that's an initiative that the government is taking forward. Also, as you said, Government of India has also started the production linked incentive scheme for solar photovoltaic modules. What is this? Production linked incentive scheme, as the name suggests, very, very simple. The government gives a target. If you reach that target, for example, if you produce 10,000 cells, then the government will give you an incentive. So the more you produce, the more incentive you will get from the side of the government. Now, incentive can be in various ways. Tax subsidy, maybe you would not have to pay electricity bill, those kind of subsidies will be given. That is called production linked incentive scheme. So Government of India has been doing a lot of this also in different sectors, including in solar cells also, so that we can actually ensure that the cost of production can come down drastically as well. Now that was solar. Solar, as I said, is out of all the source of energy, India has been performing the best on solar. There's also others such as wind, windmills, etc. They have been put up in a bit in Tamil Nadu. You can find them in Gujarat. Very small amount of them you can find them in Karnataka also. But the problem is they are not very reliable. They require wind to flow at a certain speed. Only then they will be operational. So India's total installed capacity is less than 40 gigawatts. Fourth largest capacity in the entire world, but still India doesn't have a lot of expectation from this. The good part is we have a long coastline. Long coastline means the speed of wind will be very high. So that is a good advantage, but we have not really been able to capitalize a lot on that. European nations such as UK, France, they are the ones who are leading producers of wind energy. Then tidal energy, as you know, tide from the ocean can be used. The rise and fall of water in the ocean is called tide. That rise and fall can be used to move the turbine to produce energy. We are using that, but it is almost negligible. Almost negligible amount of it is being used. Very, very little, not very much. Then we also have hydropower energy, we have biomass energy, we have fuel cells. All of these are being utilized by the Government of India. But again, if you look at the scale of India, and if you look at how much of it or how much or which form of energy can actually fulfill that scale, you have to see that the largest potential that we have in all the non-conventional sources is with solar only. Because again, the other ones, we are more dependent on where do we have to put this. For example, for wind energy, the problem is you can only put windmills in those areas where there is a high velocity of wind. So you are constrained by that place. Then you have to acquire land there. You cannot shift it. With solar, the good part is you can use it anywhere where the sunlight is falling. So government buildings, for example, most of the government buildings right now are covered with solar cells on the roof now. On the balcony, you have the solar cells. People in their own houses on the terrace are putting solar cells. So a lot of empty land, you can put solar cells there. So that is a good advantage of that as compared to other forms of energy, because other renewable forms of energy, be it wind, tidal, geothermal, the problem is that they are very constrained by the location. You can only use it where they are. You cannot take it somewhere else and I'll take it and use it somewhere else, as you can do with solar. Solar gives you a lot more options. It can be in smaller size, it can be in larger sizes also. So Government of India, although they are focusing on other things, but solar seems to be the way forward. This article mentions about how India is focusing on biogas also. I'm sure in your school, you would have seen that diagram of biogas, how biogas dome can be built. You can put your waste inside of it. Then there would be anaerobic degradation and the biogas will be produced, right? That looks very good on the diagram. It looks good, but if you look at the scale at which we need energy, it is almost negligible. And all of that comes down to, at the end of the day, solar only. Now, what has the government done? How have they given a push to non-conventional source of energy? Number one, they have permitted FDI up to 100% automatically. So foreign investments can come in very easily. Interstate transmission system charges have also been reduced. So for example, if one state produces energy, earlier when they sold energy in some other state, they had to pay charges for that. Now, no charges. From one state to the other state, energy can flow. Then Government of India is also creating new substations for renewable energy. Why? Because the existing transmission lines that we have are very, very old. Because of it, there's a lot of loss of power, loss of energy every day in tier 2, tier 3 cities. I still remember in as a child when there used to be a power cut, and we used to hear this from people that some line has disconnected. Remember, I don't know if it happens today or nowadays or not, but it used to happen that someone used to tell us, oh, that line is disconnected between two poles, something happened and the line actually got off. Now, I still remember, if it happens after 8 p.m., after 8 p.m., if a line gets disconnected, you know that the entire night there will be no electricity, because now the electricity station, they will open up in the morning, then in the morning someone will come to fix it up. Your night is gone like that. So those kind of transmission lines that actually existed, you can't use the same lines time and time again, so you have to replace that system. So basically, a new system, a new transmission line systems are also being put up. Then we have the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Urja Suraksha Evam Uthan Mahabhiyan, which is the PM Kusum scheme. What is this? So under the PM Kusum scheme, what has happened is Government of India has told the farmers, those farmers which don't have very fertile land. So some farmers have land, but it is not fertile. So how to use the land? They told them that on the land, just put solar cells. Produce electricity, we will buy electricity from you. So that is the PM Kusum scheme. They have said 10,000 megawatts of decentralized ground-mounted grids should be done. So basically, on the ground, you should have solar cells produce electricity. Then your agricultural pump that you use to draw water, use solar energy to draw it. Government of India will help you. The pumps that you use to draw out water, use solar energy for that. And also install 20 lakh agriculture pumps powered by solar energy. So 15 lakh pumps which already exist, run it from solar. Then also government will put 20 lakh new solar pumps with the help of solar energy only. There are other government initiatives as well, like the rooftop solar phase program, where the government is financing rooftop solar panels in rural areas. Those who want to put solar panels in their roof to produce electricity. Government is focusing on producing more and more hydrogen to use as a fuel. There are different types of hydrogen. We'll talk about this someday later. But Government of India is focusing on green hydrogen mainly. I think we talked about green hydrogen in some of the earlier webinars, if I'm not wrong. In the earlier webinar, yeah, we did talk about it, right? Right. So green hydrogen is the government's focus. The Government of India is trying to use hydrogen as the future fuel. Then we have the National Offshore Wind Energy Policy. We are trying to produce as much wind energy as possible from the water bodies that we have. And we have the National Wind Solar Hybrid Policy as well. We are trying to ensure that we put same transmission lines and use those for solar and wind energy as well, so that infrastructure can be best used. These are some of the government initiatives. At the same time, there are challenges as well. It's very easy to say produce solar energy, produce renewable energy, but it's very difficult to actually do that. It requires a lot of money for infrastructure. Huge investments are required. Skill development has to be done, because see, you can't just buy a solar panel, start producing electricity. If something goes wrong, there has to be a person to repair that also. People need to have knowledge about that. So we have to give courses in colleges and universities so that the people can learn these kind of things and they can actually have jobs and help support this infrastructure. There is not enough investor confidence in the renewable energy sector, means not many people are putting money in this sector to expand their businesses. Although there are companies such as Adani, Reliance, that Tata also is working in the field of solar, but still more and more investment has to come in. Then there are issues about finance. Many people don't want to put their money thinking that when we will get our money back, because of which we still have an issue of the government's plan of renewable energy not being realized at a speed that we actually had wanted to realize them. The question that you can expect here is, what are the major challenges being faced in India when it comes to switching to non-conventional sources of energy? Whew, these were the important topics from the last Kurukshetra and Yojana magazine that we wanted to discuss with you. I have a few questions, so I'll take up your question and then we'll end the session. If you are leaving, thank you so much for joining in. Okay, I'll take a few questions that I have. First, why do we consider only working in some jobs as women empowerment? Like taking care of family, household work, shouldn't that be considered empowering by including household activities in GDP calculation? See, the problem is, let's say that the women are working in the household, and as you are saying, let's include that in GDP calculation. Fine. And I don't have a problem with that. What will happen then? Your GDP numbers will improve. Anything else will happen. Will you get more money in your hands? No. See, when you say we should include women in working in their household and put a sum in and add in the GDP, I'm fine with that. The only thing that will happen is we'll be just happy. Oh, very good GDP we have. But what will change in the reality? Nothing. No one will get money. The same situation will prevail. So the idea is not to just inflate GDP numbers. That was not the goal. The goal is to eventually have more money in their hands to contribute more to the economy. That is the idea that we have. Then I have a question. Why can't we adopt such things at small levels gradually in every city, village at the same time? I think you're talking about Telonia. Some NGO started this. It was a good model. Now others can also start. It's not that others are not doing it. Some people are doing it at this small scale. Just that Telonia experiment became very good. Yes, if you think that it is a good project, who's stopping you? You can form an NGO. You can start that. So government says that government is doing it on their level. That is what the government stand is. No one is stopping anyone from doing the same thing in other areas. You can do that. If you have an NGO, go ahead, you do that. Then I have a question, PM Kusum. I am not sure what the question is. I think there was a question I got from someone, PM Kusum scheme. So PM Kusum scheme in very simple terms is the farmers that have their own land, they are not producing any crops in that land. The government is saying that use that land to put solar cells to produce energy, to produce electricity. We'll buy it from you. Secondly, the agriculture pumps that they use, pumps to take out water from underground, those should be run using solar energy. So that is the entire idea of Kusum scheme, PM Kusum scheme. The existing pumps should run with solar energy and new pumps should be put or should be installed using solar energy only. Then I have a question. Desalination means you see, when you take our water from the sea, it has salt, right? You can't drink it. So you remove the salt from it to actually make it worthy of drinking. That is called desalination. So taking out water from sea, from the ocean, making it or purifying it for people to consume, that is called desalination. Okay. Let me see if there's something else. Okay. And I have a question. Efficiency of solar energy is low. Why government is targeting it? See, you have to understand what are the other options that we have. As we discussed in terms of renewable energy, except solar, there are not many great options that we have right now. Because of that, it makes sense to go ahead with solar. As I told you, with wind, with other kind of things, it's not that we can have it anywhere. We are really bound by where we can actually put it. So that is a cause of concern. Then I have a question. What is non-revenue water? As I told you, non-revenue water means water that is wasted, that is not used by anyone, and that is not earning any money for the government. The government is not charging for that as well. That is basically wasted water in simple terms. Then I have a question. On one hand, India is encouraging solar. Maybe also, meanwhile, we also raise import tariffs by 40%. Indian companies are not yet at a stage. See, import tariffs are always used so that we can protect our internal market. Unless you put tariffs, how will you encourage our own producers? If you keep on getting something at a cheaper cost from outside the country, your local industry will never be able to flourish. So that is a very standard practice of putting import tariff. There's nothing new in that. Village working in solar energy sector. So you want the name? The name was Tilonia village. Tilonia, you can search for that. I'll take one more question. Yashpal is saying schemes are only asked from current affairs, or can old schemes also be asked? See, they are usually asked from the ones that are in the news. The problem is if you even say that, okay, old schemes are also asked, let's assume they are asked. But then the problem is, how many will you remember? There is no end to the old schemes. Ever since we became independent in 1947 till 2022, we have thousands of government schemes. So how many old schemes can you remember? There's no end to that, right? So even if you say old schemes are asked, that the solution is not to read about old schemes, the solution is to just read about the ones that are in the news. Perfect. So that brings me to the end of this webinar. It has been a great experience. I hope you also learned a lot of new things. We'll meet in another webinar very, very soon. Have a good day ahead. Bye-bye. Good night. Jai Hind.